To disassemble and reassemble your Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini, you will need a small Phillips screwdriver and a plastic separation tool. You can use a guitar pick, a plastic knife, or your thumbnail. Make sure the device is shut down. Now remove the battery cover. Remove the battery, your micro SD and SIM card. Using your small Phillips, undo all the silver screws. These are all the same size, so don't worry about getting them mixed up. You can skip this or any other stage by clicking the link at the top of the video. The rear housing is held on by clips, which I've marked in white. Using a thin plastic tool or your thumbnail, you need to insert it between the frame and the rear housing, starting at the USB port. Work your way around the edge and you'll feel the clips release as you go round. Now you can remove the rear housing. This contains a few antennas, 4G, Wi-Fi and GPS. At the bottom, this contains the loudspeaker, and these are the contacts, and the 3G GSM antenna. You might need to move this over to a new case. Lift that out and transfer it over. If you're replacing the speaker, you might need to transfer this metal bracket over to your new one. Once you've done that, you can place that into your new housing. If you're having trouble with your micro USB port or your microphone, you can replace this circuit board. Disconnect this flex cable. This is for the home and touch keys. This one's for the 3G and GSM antenna. And this large one is for the micro USB port. Gently lift the microphone from the casing. There's a small amount of double-sided adhesive holding this on. If you're replacing this board, don't worry too much about any damage. Once it's released, gently lift the main board slightly and remove the board. If the replacement doesn't come with the rubber microphone gasket, then you can remove it from your old one and transfer it over to your new flex cable. These two gold contacts are for the 3G and GSM antenna. To remove the headphone socket or the earpiece, start by disconnecting this flex cable. This one's for the headphone socket, and this is for the earpiece and proximity sensor, and this one's for the front facing camera. Now lift this metal clip up and release that from the front housing. Remove the front camera and gently lift out the proximity sensor and the earpiece. This is the infrared LED and the proximity and ambient light sensor. If you're replacing this, you may need to remove this rubber gasket and then transfer that over to your new one. A new earpiece and proximity sensor may not come with this plastic spacer. This LED at the top here is the infrared blaster, and you can remove the plastic spacer and transfer that over to your new one. Bring the sensor back down and make sure that's stuck down nicely. To replace the headphone socket, SIM tray, camera or the screen, we need to lift this main board away from the front housing. There are no clips holding it down, so gently lift around the outside edge. It seems to get stuck on this screw post when you lift. Don't force it. Just keep working your way around the outside edge and eventually it'll lift up. Make sure the camera is released. Be careful as it's still attached to the screen flex cable. Open the main board up and disconnect the screen flex. This is the power switch. Volume up and down. And if you need to replace the main camera, lift this little bar up. That releases the cable. And then put your replacement back in. Make sure that white line lines up and push the bar back down. This is the connection for your 3G GSM antenna, and this is an external test port. This contact is for the Wi-Fi. These are for the 4G antenna, and this one's for the GPS. This is the secondary microphone, and the sound enters through this small hole. Now we can remove the headphone socket. And if you need to replace the SIM or micro SD tray, start by lifting this small bar up and removing the flex cable. And if you're replacing it, you don't have to worry about any damage. here I want to reuse this, so I'm being very careful trying to lift it away from the chassis. You can use some heat to soften the adhesive, make this a bit easier. And if you're transferring this over to a new screen, then make sure it's nice and straight. If you have a new screen with the metal frame, you might need to transfer this metal plate over to your new one. So remove that. And transfer it over. This keeps the screen connector pushed down onto the main board. To remove the vibrator, insert a screwdriver here and twist, lift that away, and very carefully lift the flex cable away. If you have a new screen that doesn't come with this metal frame, you'll need to use heat to separate the glass from the front housing. You can follow the link up the top here or in the description to see how to do this. For reassembly, place your vibrating motor back into the housing. Now replace the headphone socket. The SIM and SD card tray. Feed that into the socket. Make sure that white line lines up and then push the flap back down. Line up the pins with the holes in the SIM tray and don't push down too hard or you'll bend the metal casing. Before we replace the earpiece and proximity sensor, it's a good idea to fit the main board first. Line up the main screen connector and push it down gently until you feel it snap into place. Bring the main board down. Make sure the headphone socket flex cable isn't being trapped, and gently push the main board down, making sure it locates on this screw post. Now reconnect the flex cable and push the main camera into its housing. Replace the earpiece and proximity sensor. And reconnect the flex cable. Replace the front camera. And now take that metal bracket and hook it round the small plastic clip. then push it down into place. Now we can replace the micro USB and microphone board. Lift the main board slightly. And make sure the flex cable goes underneath. And then reconnect to the main board. Reconnect the home and touch keys and the 3G GSM antenna. Make sure you place the rubber gasket for the microphone. Then place the microphone down into the gasket. A final check to make sure everything's plugged in okay. And now we can replace the rear housing. So press it down until you hear it snap. You might have to squeeze quite hard to get some of these clips to go in. There you go. Now we can replace all of the screws. Only do these up finger tight, or you might strip the thread. Before replacing the battery, make sure you replace the SIM and micro SD card. Then the battery cover. And then you can switch on. Make sure everything's working okay. You can enter diagnostics *#0 *#. This brings up a diagnostics menu, so you can check for any dead pixels. Adjust the earpiece, screen dimming, This is your main camera. This brings up all the sensors. This one tests the earpiece. And this one produces a completely black screen. Hit the back button a few times to come out of this menu. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and give me the thumbs up. I shall do my best to make some more.